Step 2. Develop your first product. When Moaz Ali, founder of Native Deodorant, started the business, he put in a grand total of $500. 2 years later, he sold the company to Procter & Gamble for $100 million. That's a pretty good return on investment, I'd say. We bootstrapped the whole thing, Moaz said from the stage of one of our conferences. We launched on Product Hunt, and the most entrepreneurial of entrepreneurs go on this site and upvote and downvote it on a daily basis. On day 1, we'd sold 1 bar and were at the very bottom of the list on Product Hunt. Forget it, I said, I'm shutting this business down. Then a friend of his said he had an in at Product Hunt and that he could get Native near the top. By the next day, they'd sold 50 bars and were at the top of the list. Once we had those first 50 orders, we bought our first 100 units, said Moaz. We sold the first 50 bars without even having any inventory. If you bought on a Tuesday, your product was made within 1 day of the order. We had zero inventory laying around, and it allowed us to stay really lean. Moaz didn't use Amazon, retail, or Kickstarter. He sent all traffic to one place, the company website, and encouraged visitors to subscribe to its email list in exchange for a $2 discount. People usually subscribed, which increased Native's conversion rate. When we tested this, we kept the test going a good 6 weeks past the planned duration, even though we already had hard data that it definitely worked, that people subscribed and that subscribers were more likely to become customers, said Moaz. The reason was that I was certain in my heart of hearts that it shouldn't be so. But that's the thing, when it comes to marketing, I have no idea. Despite spending all the money we've spent on ads and all the success we've had with creative, I still don't know what's going to work. I'm not the customer. That's why we test everything. While Native is based in San Francisco, it didn't raise capital like everyone in Silicon Valley. Instead, it tested its products like tech companies test software, according to Moaz. Early on, when we launched in 2015, we realized we had a pretty mediocre repurchase rate, 20%. Our reviews were coming in at an average of 4 stars. We started simply asking customers why they didn't buy it again. You were willing to spend $12 on this deodorant, why didn't you buy it again? The answer, Moaz found, was resoundingly application. Customers didn't like how the deodorant applied. It was too flaky. They spent the entire first year of the business working to solve that problem. They were also focused on staining. Moaz would A/B test products by rubbing them on all his shirts, throwing them in the wash, and seeing what happened. With all the testing the company did, it was ready to launch a reformulated product in a year. The new formulation was infinitely superior to the original. Reviews went from 4 stars to 4.7 stars, and repeat purchases doubled. It's easy to fall prey to shiny object syndrome and lose your priorities, Moaz cautioned. One of our investors told us we needed to launch into other categories, and that no one was going to buy a single category business. But I felt that things were going so well that I didn't want to lose my focus on it. If I branch into another business category, what are the chances I'd be able to do it as well as this business is going? Our sales channels were also questioned. We were approached by Target, Whole Foods, Costco, Sephora, Ulta. The number of brick-and-mortar stores that approached us was 100 pages long. We decided to stay laser-focused on what we were good at, selling on our website, because what we were doing was working. We doubled down on what was working, instead of getting bogged down by the typical dogma of other startups in Silicon Valley. We didn't do any influencer marketing for years. People told us we were crazy. You don't have to listen to all of the noise out there. Whatever your team is doing well that's generating revenue, double down on it. Stay focused on what you're doing well and ignore everything else. When it was time to go to market, Moaz knew he'd grown an immensely profitable business, but to a point. He felt confident that he could build from nothing into an 8-figure business. But he didn't feel confident he could build a $100 million business. He wasn't sure he had the skill set to take the business to the next level, of playing with the big boys. The initial acquisition conversation was actually not with Procter & Gamble, its eventual buyers. It was with another business that came knocking on Moaz's door and wanted to talk, partnering, which always means buying. Valuation conversations started happening, and Moaz quickly realized that he needed to run a real process and do it right. He made a list of 100 companies he might want to sell to, crossed out all the companies he didn't like, and ended up with a list of 16 people to go talk to. And we did just that. Talk to those 16 people, he told us. We'd give our presentation and show off our business. We ended up just really falling in love with the folks at Procter & Gamble. Procter & Gamble loved them back, so much so that they bought the company for a cool $100 million. You always start small. But when you focus on what works, you get incredible results. How to make your first product. When I was 6, my aunt had a boyfriend named Don. Don was the first rich person I ever met. To this day, I don't know how Don made his money, I just remember the one time he blew my mind. We were sitting on my parents' front porch, and he was giving me my first business lesson. I had asked him to teach me about being successful. Yes, at 6 years old. When you're a real entrepreneur, you're born with the itch. Don's first lesson to me was on product creation. To this day, I remember it clearly. Ryan, did you know there are companies out there that can make any idea you have come to life? What do you mean? I asked. What's something that you and your friends are interested in right now? Yo-yos, I said. At recess all my friends bring their yo-yos out and compare tricks. What's one of the tricks called? Walk the dog. If you wanted to come up with a yo-yo that would bark when you do walk the dog, you could call one of these companies, and they could make that happen and send it to you. I could barely believe it. Companies could do that? Imagine how impressed my friends would be if I showed up next recess with a barking yo-yo. I now know that Don was talking about contract manufacturers, companies that make your product for you and sell it to you at wholesale. However, much to my great childhood remorse, Don didn't actually know how to find these companies. 20 years later, I discovered that Don was right. Other people will bring your ideas to life, and if you like it, you can order it in small or large quantities. It really can be that easy to take a gateway idea and make it a gateway product. Thankfully, today you don't need to know someone to have a product made, as contract manufacturers compete for your business online. You'll find a ton of contract manufacturers if you search for them on Google, but the biggest marketplace in the world is Alibaba.com, where you can shop contract manufacturers to find the product you want to create. Don's lesson was top of mind when I started my second brand with my buddy Sean. Sean and I were good partners because we filled gaps in each other's game. I was in charge of decisions and marketing, and Sean was in charge of research and operations. When we were trying to identify our target customer, he spent a ton of time putting together spreadsheets comparing all the different markets we should consider. When he showed them to me and asked me what I thought, I replied, yoga. Huh? We could easily do multiple products serving people who do yoga, I told him. It's an emerging trend. And I know a ton of those people, I can ask them what they want. Let's start a yoga business. Sean's initial response was, that's not a quantitative analysis, Ryan. I've never been one to overthink things, most people spend way too much time in the research period. I make decisions fast and adjust later. With our target customer identified, we made a list of possible products and chose our gateway product, a yoga mat. With that, we began the process of product development. We looked up the top-selling yoga mats on Amazon and read through the reviews. We asked questions on Facebook groups, subreddits, and Instagram influencer accounts. It didn't take long before we had an idea of the main pain points we needed to address with our first product. I remembered Don's advice and began looking for people to make the product. With a quick scroll and a click, we could choose between a wholesaler in China, a private label supplier out of India, or a contract manufacturer in Vietnam. For about $50, we were able to order a set of yoga mat samples that had the exact features we were looking for. It was that easy. Samples in hand, we needed to refine our product idea to make sure we were really hitting the pain points we'd identified. At that time, I'd done yoga maybe 2 or 3 times in my life, and I wasn't nearly the right demographic for our mats anyway. That forced me to ask questions. We were targeting yoga-loving millennials, so I went where they often congregate, Starbucks. There, I did the kind of tough field work that really makes an entrepreneur sweat, asking young women questions over coffee. Which yoga mat do you prefer? Why? What makes the difference between a bad yoga mat and a good one? What's wrong with your current yoga mat? What do you think of this one? And what about this one? Next, I headed over to local yoga studios to see how our samples stacked up against the strenuous demands of a yoga class. A few classes later, Sean and I had everything we needed to narrow down our product development. Armed with all our data, we went back to the manufacturers. From a couple yoga clueless guys, we'd become knowledgeable enough to know not just what a good yoga mat looked like, but how it had to feel and perform. We knew what we needed our yoga mat to do. Now we just had to find the manufacturer to supply it. It didn't take long to find some willing partners. We set down the specifications, and Sean talked to all the manufacturers who said they could fulfill our requests. We narrowed it down to 2 quality options, and then we choose the one with the best price and the best communication. Sean ordered the prototype, had it embossed with our brand logo, Zen Active, and in no time at all, we unrolled our first yoga mat on the floor in Sean's house. That was our yoga mat. It was our product, with our specifications, with our logo, in Sean's house, ready for sale. And all it took was one website and a lot of groundwork asking questions. Now, I'm not saying we got the product totally right on our first try. We made some mistakes, and we made adjustments to improve the product over time, but the basics of taking an idea and making it a ready-for-market product really is this simple. All you have to do is find the suppliers, do the research, make the tweaks, and find the best offer out there. Find your supplier. I've come to trust and rely on suppliers from Alibaba.com, but I know it has its detractors. When it comes to user experience, the site is, frankly, a bit of a mess. There's also a certain distance between you and the supplier that the more firm handshake loving, look them in the eye while you're negotiating types don't like. These days, though, Alibaba has a lot of competition, so there are plenty of options out there if you want a different path to your product. You can search for wholesalers, manufacturing companies, or contract manufacturers for your chosen product and find any number of smaller companies you can contact personally to get that more direct experience. Or, if you're feeling particularly old-fashioned, you can attend a trade show in the market you're going into. Find out where the next event is, hop on a plane, and go speak to a room full of potential manufacturers in a new city. Some people even go so far as to fly to China to meet directly with manufacturers. I've never done that, and I never plan to do that, but plenty of my friends swear by it. Of these options, though, I'd still recommend starting on Alibaba or a similar site and ordering ready-made product samples. Something magical happens when you hold a product in your hand, you realize it's real. While it may seem at the outset like the best way to make your perfect product is to go meet a contract manufacturer in person and get them to build your design from scratch, that option comes with a lot more risk, the risk of lost time. We're talking about at least 3 months before you see your first prototype, more likely 6, or even 12. All of that, and you won't even know right away if the resulting prototype will be the one that will make your brand. That's why I recommend you come up with the idea, get samples, and improve over time. Perfectionists hate the approach, but you can't expect to make it to $1 million in 12 months if it takes 12 months just to get a look at what you're creating. Refine it. Don't overthink it. A lot of entrepreneurs think that success in business requires you to reinvent the wheel, and that you have to reinvent it perfectly the first time. If you don't have a wheel that can do something new from the moment you debut it, no one's ever going to bother buying it, right? It's got to be new, and it's got to be perfect, and until you've got that down, best keep it to yourself. That may have been true at some point in the past, but it certainly isn't now. The wheel hasn't been reinvented in ages, and yet wheel manufacturers and wheel dealers are doing just fine. In fact, new wheel competitors still pop up every now and again. What are they selling? The same damn wheels, just tweaked. The key to your product probably won't be that it's new. It'll be that it's different, even if it's just in one small way. Here's what I mean. I was once the keynote speaker at a conference where an attendee came up and told me she was marketing yoga classes to baby boomers. After a little while, she mentioned that her client group's biggest challenge was knee pain when they got on a yoga mat. The majority of yoga mats are manufactured and marketed toward young people. You can turn that information into a great product in 2 ways. You can either design a new, extra thick yoga mat made out of a new material that no one has ever thought to try before. Or, you can take an extra thick yoga mat that already exists, and focus on speaking to a new customer, boomers who do yoga. Don't waste time trying to come up with a new wheel. Simply give your person what they already want. Once you have some samples in hand, focus on refining, not revolutionizing. I know the temptation is to pursue perfection, but perfect doesn't sell. That's not to say that quality and uniqueness don't sell, they do. But sales force you to improve the quality of the product. As Peter Diamandis says, if you are not embarrassed by the first iteration of your product, then you aren't moving fast enough. Instead of trying to think yourself to success, Focus on getting more feedback on your samples, so that you can refine what isn't working, and really target those who will be receptive to your product. In this work, you've got to focus on the big decisions first and worry about everything else later. Address a pain point with your product, reach out to those who have that problem, and then get feedback, preferably in the form of sales. The longer you search for the ideal product or the ideal branding, the longer your product lives in fairy dust land rather than in a reality where it can secure you that financial freedom. I've known far too many people who get hung up on designing packaging when they should be getting their product ready to sell. They work and rework a logo, change out the color of their plastic wrapping, consider 100 different fonts for their brand name. Honestly, if you're selling a product on Amazon, most people won't even notice your packaging. For the customer, the packaging is a brown Amazon box on the doorstep. If the product speaks to them, they'll get it regardless of the plastic you wrap it in. I don't want to give the impression that design features aren't important at all. The branding, the logo, the overall design, that's all going to be important in expanding your reach. But you can change that later. The only things you can't change later are the things that prevent you from taking a sale in the first place. Your job now is to eliminate all those things as quickly as possible. Concentrate on getting the research done, so you can get the product right, go to market, and start taking sales. If the packaging isn't up to your dreamed up standards, come back to it after you're moving inventory and money is flowing into your bank account. Refining your product is a never-ending process. When we first started selling yoga mats, my attention was solely on moving those first products. Shortly after we'd gone up on Amazon, though, we found a more affordable manufacturer whose mats were thicker, higher quality, and $1 less per unit. A better deal for a better product was out there, but I didn't put our momentum on hold to look for it. We made the adjustment as we progressed. That never-ending, purpose-driven quest for improvement gives you the freedom to direct your focus right now on getting that product on the market. Whenever I catch myself overthinking a product and delaying the crucial move from concept to sale, I remind myself, let's make some mistakes. After all, there's so little risk involved in this method. When you're working with small orders up front, the downside of a mistake is very low. You'll find a way to sell those first 100 units on Amazon eventually. Even if you don't, the loss is minimal. Mistakes, even bad ones, are a part of this business. No amount of preparation ensures a perfect process. Sometimes you'll make a modest mistake, like going to market with the second best supplier cutting slightly into your margins. Other times, you'll commit a nastier error, like the time we lowered the price on our yoga mats without really thinking through our inventory limitations. At that point, we were still in the small order phase, hedging our bets with a limited supply of yoga mats. Up to that point, we'd kept the price high, which was great. Profit margins were solid. We were attracting the right people. We had a steady but not overwhelming number of sales. Then we decided we wanted to chase a higher Amazon ranking. A better ranking would mean more eyes on the product and more purchases. It seemed a nice shortcut to upgrading to larger orders and bigger profits. To do that, though, we needed to boost sales. So we slashed the price, handing out a better bargain to the customer. A lot of beginner entrepreneurs, and a fair number of experienced ones, too, are afraid of high prices. They want to cut prices as soon as financially possible, probably because some intro to business class told them that's the best way to build a brand. I can tell you from experience, though, that if you're building a brand, you don't want to get into the business of cutting prices. You want to be near the top price point in your market. The reason is simple: it's much easier to scale a premium brand than it is to scale a low-priced brand. Only companies selling inventory in massive quantities can really win at that game. You're not going to beat Walmart's price, so don't play Walmart's game. When we cut our price, we sold really well, because when you follow the method in this book, it works, but we ran out of stock. It was a predictable outcome. Being out of stock is the worst thing that can possibly happen to your new business because you're essentially out of business when you can't take orders. We had to wait out the 4-week lag for another shipment to cross an ocean and get to the Amazon warehouse. When we finally got new stock back in, we were essentially starting over. Yes, we had customer reviews, but our momentum was dead. We had to run another discount to get moving again. We did recover, but that one mistake set us back months. I can't say whether an extra month of planning would have kept us from making that awful choice. Probably not, honestly. You can't control for everything. Your goal is just to take your product from an idea to a physical item in a customer's hand. It's simpler than most people think it is. Find the right supplier, get samples, refine with research, put in a small order, and get the product online. That's all you need to worry about right now. Don't overthink it. Just fix the mistakes as they come. One of my mastermind members, Travis Killian, once told me about how he gets products to stand out in a busy, loud marketplace. His answer was simple: we listen to people. We execute so many split tests, it's insane. We'll mock up the product and ask people, which do you like better? This one or this other one from our competitor? We do that for all the top competitors in the market, all the ones we think have the best products in the niche. Split testing requires nothing more than asking people which one of two things they like better. That's it. Show someone two items, and ask for his or her preference. It's one of those rare things that happens to be simple, easy, and effective. I remember one time, when we were just starting out, Travis told me, we paid one of our friends to go to the mall in Austin, show pictures of our products versus our competitors' products, and collect survey answers on which one they preferred. If it sounds like a ton of time and money to pay someone to do in-person surveys and split testing, Travis says that's not even essential. When we started out, that's what we did. Now, we use services online to run constant split tests of our products against our competitors' products. The most important thing is to get the feedback on why survey respondents have a preference. Why do they like the other guy's product over mine? That's the data we really want to collect. We spend our time analyzing that data and applying it to the products, deciding first if the feedback is something we can, and want, to address, and then making changes from there. All of this happens before the product is released to the market. Say you use a French press to make coffee, said Travis. There are tons of French press designs out there. Some are full stainless steel, some have mostly glass, some are more sleek, curved designs, some are more industrial. What we do to develop and split test a French press is collect all the product designs we think are best and then split test them against the top sellers in the category. Based on the split test, we'll decide on which design to go with. Getting customer feedback is a direct result of getting sales, according to Travis. When you launch a product, you do whatever you can to get as many sales as you can early on, because that's what drives feedback. That's what allows you to listen to your customer. When we first started out, we went from, in 4 months, doing $4,000 to $5,000 in sales a month, to 2 years in, doing about $2 million in sales a month. Those sales are the fuel that runs the feedback machine and allows new products to be developed. Moving beyond small time, it's normal to feel nervous or downright terrified to place an inventory order, especially when you don't know if the product is going to sell. You can mitigate that fear by listening closely to your person, and also using the stacking the deck strategies I'll outline in later chapters. However, it's okay to start small. You might only order 100 units of a product when you start. That's what I did. However, once you start to see sales, all your attention is going to go into keeping enough product. That will require you to place larger inventory orders. Getting to the point where you're financed enough to make that transition can be tricky. In other words, managing the money side of this can be a challenge for first-time entrepreneurs. It's counterintuitive, but your goal at the beginning isn't to maximize profit. Your goal at this stage of the process is to establish the systems of getting product and selling it. You will optimize for profit later. A student of mine who was selling a fish oil supplement kept trying to find a way around the upgrade cost by switching suppliers. He was constantly looking to improve his supply chain process, jumping from supplier to supplier as soon as one would offer a slightly better price. His margins did improve modestly every time, but the supply chain wasn't predictable. He kept running out of product, which, again, is the worst thing that can happen to your business. Instead of progress, he was circling around the same difficulty, making small orders, jumping to another supplier, making another small order, and then promptly running out of stock. Margins don't mean anything when you can't guarantee you'll have the product people want when they want to buy it. What's more, he was missing out on building the necessary momentum to cover expansion. When he came to me for advice, I told him he had to learn to stay put with someone and make it work. The solution to his problem was to settle into a deeper relationship with a supplier. Which supplier? If all your suppliers seem about equal in price and quality, I told him, choose the one with the best communication. So he went out to New York City and met one supplier face to face. then used that strong communication to negotiate better terms. He got a 20% discount on his product, a 20% boost to his profits, and the consistency to keep the product moving without interruption. For him, making the jump to larger orders in the hundreds of units was as easy as sitting down with the right manufacturer and making a great deal. He had the supply, he had the demand, and he had the margins to make it work. Not everyone is that lucky. For the rest of us, getting product made and sold introduces a new problem: funding. To scale past small-time operations, and to make sure you always have the inventory on hand to meet increasing demand, to make it to the million, you will probably face a money problem. That problem cripples many new entrepreneurs, but if you play your hand right, it can help you grow even faster. Entrepreneur Spotlight. Hani Sunarto, an engineer who lives in Illinois, is originally from Indonesia. Once a year, she makes the long trip to visit her family. She and her sister have always used this opportunity to go on a Twoto 3-week hiking and travel adventure. The sisters were out in the wild in 2015 when one of their backpacks broke. Frustrated, Hani's sister asked her, "You're an engineer, right? Why don't you design a better backpack?" It may have started as a joke, but the idea stuck with Hani. By the end of the trip, she had the concept for her company, Neat Pack. Hani started working on designs. Her sister, who frequently traveled to China for her fashion and textile business, looked for the right textiles and other materials for their first product. The company's target audience was minimalist travelers looking for affordable, high-quality travel bags, as opposed to high-end leather luggage. The bags would do two things really well: organize all your travel items and never, ever break. Hani's attention to detail and her all-in mentality is what persuaded me to invest in her business once it started to take sales. However, she had to overcome her own set of challenges, just as everyone does. The sisters' first product was a toiletry bag with an adjustable compartment, a small interior unit you could set your toothpaste in without having it turn into a mess. Hani started with just a sketch of the underlying concept, an approach she was accustomed to from her work as an engineer. Her sister found a supplier who was also helpful in fleshing out a 3D design using AutoCAD. The sketch became a blueprint, and the sisters and supplier iterated on the design until it was right. This first product only took a couple iterations to get the product to a stage where the commitment for a minimum order of 1,000 units could be made. The concept originated in June or July 2015, and the company launched its first product in late November. By that time, Hani's husband had come aboard to help out. The response from their audience was almost immediately positive. Hani already belonged to several Facebook travel groups, so the sisters set up and launched a new travel group of their own. "My sister and I came up with this great new design for a travel toiletry bag," they said. They got a lot of, "Wow, that's pretty cool," responses, to which they followed up with, "It's going to be on Amazon in a couple of weeks if you want to check it out." Members of the Facebook group started posting on social media, saying how much they loved the new toiletry bag. That's when the sisters finally knew their design was legit. When Neat Pack launched its second product, Hani and her sister thought it was the greatest thing in the world. It flopped. Customers said that the material wasn't light or flexible enough, that it was hard to fold into a backpack or suitcase, and that it was too large. Although the design underwent a fair amount of tweaking, the product was eventually discontinued. This was an ego-bruising disappointment, of course. Hani felt she knew what she was doing. After all, she's both an engineer and intrepid traveler. She and her sister came up with all sorts of justifications for why their products were superior. Unfortunately, market response didn't bear them out. Hani has seen many other sellers get similarly carried away, wasting far too much money on an unproven concept. They're so sure they've got a hit on their hands that they launch in 5 different channels right away. It's going to work. People will love it. You only know that once you get feedback, sales, or both. Focus on proof of concept for one product sold through a single channel. Make sure it's what your audience needs and wants and get as much feedback as you can as early as possible. How many times Hani, her sister, and her husband would go back to the drawing board during the design phase was determined on a product-by-product basis. The company developed a mailing list from its Facebook group and other travel groups and continually asked for feedback. Customers listed pros and cons and also gave the company ideas for future products. Through it all, though, they felt incredibly lucky to have an audience who gave honest feedback and felt like a community. They knew right away if products weren't liked or had to be returned, and in a couple of cases, they made the decision to cut their losses and discontinue an item. The company's first toiletry bag was compact in size. Customers soon began asking for a bigger toiletry bag that could be used for the family and kids. This medium-sized toiletry bag was developed and launched in about 7 months and was the company's second major success. Subsequent successes included a sling bag, which is now one of the company's best sellers, a foldable backpack, and a crossbody bag for women. Hanny believes one of her company's major early mistakes was putting too much focus on selling through Amazon, losing the more important focus on brand building as a result. Growth stalled in 2016 because not enough attention had been paid to defining, creating, and expanding the brand's core audience. In 2017, to overcome this setback, NeatPack hired a marketing agency to help expand its mailing list. The resulting increased exposure and series of promotions grew the customer base from 3,000 to 10,000 and created a major boost in subsequent product launches. Leveraging the mailing list enabled the company to launch its crossbody bag profitably right off the bat. If you're thinking of starting a business, you have to remember that proof of concept is key, Hanny says. I've seen a lot of people fail because they were spinning their wheels on less critical aspects of the business. Go ahead and sell your product on Amazon, your website, or whatever your preferred channel may be, but get a proof of concept first, before a lot of money is spent unnecessarily. Is your product something the market, and your audience, really needs? That kind of focus is what led me to invest in Hanny a few years ago, and while I may have bought into her company, I was really buying into her.